All right, I'm excited to have on the podcast with me today, Ericka Aviles. It's great to have you with me, Ericka.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah, and it's good to find you well and busy during these times.
Yeah, same. Enjoying time outdoors while I can before it gets hot and working away as well. So fortunately, grateful things are good.
Very good. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the world of communications and community relations.
Yeah, actually this year, and I think we have a similar anniversary. This year, my firm turns 5 years old. And I most of my background has been in the hospitality and marketing space. In my past life, I worked at the LVCVA, Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, and prior to that with MGM Resorts. And it was always in, whether it was sales, marketing, or communications roles where I really got to learn that space a lot. And I think 5 years ago, I saw how much of a need there was for someone. My firm specializes in communications and reaching the Hispanic population. And I saw how much of a need there was for that. And it was really an idea and a dream and a plan, and let's see where this goes. And RTC was my first client, and when I got my first client, I realized, like, wow, there really is a need and an opportunity for me in this space, because there is we just need that outreach to our harder to count communities.
Nice. And kind of tell me the emotions you had when you went off on your own and started this new venture.
I mean, it was scary, of course. It was scary. I even remember, I got my business license like the day after Thanksgiving, and just hitting the submit button, on my online, having my husband with me, I said, okay, let's see where this goes. And definitely a whirlwind of emotions, but definitely a lot of pride and, achievement that I don't think I ever thought, like, I'm going to have my own business one day. And it was really a leap of faith, and just, I think, something to show my family, my community, that someone, I am a product of the Las Vegas community, that we have it in ourselves to be, entrepreneurs and take on these challenges and identify these opportunities. So I'm very grateful every day, to still have this opportunity. And I think it's, for me, another way of giving back to the community that's been so great to me.
I know. I think I saw somewhere, like you mentioned, we started around the same time, and I saw some statistic where 80% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. So we've made it.
Yes,
No,
yes,
no more risks or anything for either of us.
yes. I mean, and especially, during these trying times, right? As a lot of my friends in the hospitality industry are still furloughed or, out of jobs, like, I'm very grateful that, there is even more of a need for communication specialists to say, hey, how do we, you know, develop new ways to communicate and engage to the community. So I've actually been writing more and busier, in a sense where I think people are, we're going to be doing things a lot differently now.
You'd hope so. You'd hope that a lot of our agencies and clients start thinking about how we could do this more virtually, and the public meetings, would just be icing on the cake in the future. But you never know what's going to happen. And I know you, Ericka, through working together on some transportation projects. But I know you serve some of the other industries in the Las Vegas community. What are some of those?
Yeah, most recently I just wrapped up my project with the Nevada State on the Nevada State Census 2020, which the census still continues, but on the initial, in terms of public relations and stakeholder engagement, and the outreach for that started right around COVID as well. So it was really having to strategize and, looking at our plan and what are we going to do differently, because, we went from having people, at that time at a lot of events and community events and meetings to we can't meet in person, so it was really, what can we do digitally? in that space. So it was a great experience to work with the team on that. And then I also, right now, I'm actually working with the Clark County Water Reclamation District on the Wipes Clog Pipes campaign, because there is an influx of people flushing wipes down toilets. And not just wipes, but also, gloves and face masks. So it's really, as we're opening the state back up, it's really what's the messaging, what's the communication look like. And I'm helping specifically with the Hispanic community outreach and those channels. So it's like, even, what does that look like, and what is that planning? So I would say I work with a lot of, in the transportation space or agencies that serve the community. I've worked with Discovery Children's Museum, the Library District, RTC, that provide services. And it's really, finding new and innovative ways to make sure that they are getting their message across to specific audiences in our multicultural community.
Very cool. And what are some of the services you offer to that wide range of industries?
I would say a lot. Well, within these past projects has been on the PR and working with the Hispanic media. We did an op-ed on El Mundo newspaper of just, the importance of having the community participate in not flushing, your wipes down your toilet. So I would say in terms of the Hispanic media relations or media relations in general, a lot in just as well, like the strategy and, coming up with plans. I think a lot of organizations or individuals, they have the best intentions, but sometimes they don't know where to get started. So it's the strategy session of, okay, you say you want to engage with this community for this purpose and you serve the audience. Well, what does that plan look like? So it's the plan development and execution, because I found that early on when I started my business, that we would come up with these plans and tactics and deliverables, but then, whether it was they don't have enough staff, sometimes they don't have bilingual staff, or they don't have the resources, it turned into, well, Ericka, you've been great, at the strategy and the consulting, but now we need someone to execute it. So it was really, it's very much turnkey in terms of the services and what the client specifically is looking for and what they're trying to accomplish within the community.
Well, in regards to the flushing the wipes, we have a pile of kids and have had wipes for years. And so we've learned you don't, and out where I live in the middle of nowhere, we're on septic tanks. So if we do stuff like that, it's our own problem and we have to deal with it.
And that's where, there's all of these, right, agencies and services that we don't always think about until there's a problem with it, right? And, with everybody being at home now too, it's really like, how are we going to reach, right? How are we going to reach them? Because now it's so much, it's far more than let's do let's set up a table at an event. It's really, are we going to do, Facebook ads, or are we going to do Twitter chats? We were on the census, we were challenging, the cities, who's going to, report in the highest people taking the census. So there's like that challenge going on. It's making it exciting and making it eye-catching, because now, more than ever, we're consuming a lot of content. So what is it that's going to make it stand out and get people to take action?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our industry is, like you said, meetings, even door-to-door communications, and COVID has changed a lot of that. What changes do you hope stick around even after, hopefully, we return back to the way things were before?
That's a good question. What changes? The diversification of how people, think about public outreach and public engagement, that it is more than let's do one public meeting or let's do one mailer. It's really, engagement, outreach to me is a one-way communication. That one touch point, let's connect with the people by pushing out the message. But I really would hope that they focus more on the engagement, where it is turning that community into enthusiasts. And it's that two-way communication. So I would hope to see more of those tactics, or just the wanting to engage more on the long-term perspective as well, and building the relationship with that audience that they're trying to serve.
Very cool. And you've mentioned your work with the Hispanic community. And from the outside, people might just think, your bilingual abilities and translation. But how does understanding the culture in the community help in that outreach?
That's a very good question, and it is so much more than it. I mean, I speak the language, but it's there's a lot of agencies that have bilingual people, on staff, which is awesome. It's an asset to have, but it's really being out in that community and building the trust with the community, knowing who are the stakeholders, knowing the pain points, knowing where there's need and opportunity, and where you can be of service to that particular organization or individual, and making it easy for them. So and especially just now in our times, I really think that building that trust component and that trust factor, and those relationships out in the community is very critical to the success of any future project, whether it is through public outreach or infrastructure, or I think whatever the if it's serving the public, if it's serving the community, there has to be that component of it. And I think agencies and organizations have to think that from the beginning. Public outreach shouldn't be an afterthought.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the Las Vegas community, the either Hispanic or the non-English speaking population is a significant amount. I mean, do you have an idea of, is it 10%, 20%? Do you have those numbers?
Yeah, no, it's 30% of our population in Nevada is Hispanic. And that's just based from the census 10 years ago. So, I think will be interesting to see what, after this census is completed this year, what those new numbers and demographics look like. And, and something I wanted to share, within the Hispanic community, you have people just like in other markets, but you have different audiences in the Hispanic community. People like my parents who still read the newspaper, who watch the news on TV. I'm a bilingual mom raising bilingual kids, but I consume my information on social media or ads, or it's really like, who are you, who's your core audience for any campaign? What's the demographic? Or is it the general community, but having those different channels of communication with the vast audiences. And knowing too, we have, I'm Salvadorian. I was born in El Salvador. We have a lot of, big Mexican communities, Central American communities, South American. And I laugh, with my friends, even when we go out to eat, who are also, of Hispanic descent. We have different names for foods, for what we call a toilet, in this last project. So there's all of these nuances that I think, depending on the project and what you're trying to do in the community, is having a trusted voice and an expert to help you guide through that, because it can get a little tricky in that sense.
I'm sure that's a lot of value you bring, your knowledge of that community. I mean, if I was a project manager, I would obviously want to get involved in the Hispanic community and do the bilingual part. But, you might be able to say, hey, we need to do more bus ads because more people use the bus, or we need to do more billboard, or we need to do more Spanish radio. And that's probably something that your clients appreciate, is that knowledge, not just of the language, but the specifics of the diverse demographics within the Hispanic community.
Yes, yeah, and even we were just talking about like the Downtown Access Project, right? It's taking place. We're planning on a virtual and a public meeting, but there's so many nuances even within that sector of the communities. Who are the different businesses and stakeholders, and what opportunities, and I think that's why sometimes we can all just get too busy to think about, like, what are those low-hanging fruit opportunities that we can take advantage of, but also what are new new and innovative ideas that we can engage. And you know, just within this past quarter, right? It's like now there's all of these community Facebook groups in Spanish. There's all of these, you know, podcast opportunities or newsletters or things of that nature that could serve as different communication channels. And that's where I think it serves, you know, having someone on your team that knows what's going on in the community, because it is much more than let's just take an ad to take out an ad for this public meeting, or I want people to think of it more as let's just check the box that we did Hispanic outreach or community engagement. It's really starting from it, you know, at the beginning, and what does that plan look like through the length of the project, and what does success look like for you know, the company or the client.
And do you know of any, I mean, this isn't directly related to what you do, but are there other emerging demographics within Las Vegas that are getting big enough that, you know, our agencies want to start doing bilingual outreach to, like Japanese or some of those others?
Yes, yeah. With the census, actually, there was a big emphasis with the Asian Pacific Islander community. And it was really, you know, I didn't focus as much on that segment of our community, but it's really same with those, is learning who are the stakeholders, what are the outlets of communication, and you know how do they communicate and engage with one another. It's really knowing all of those little details about what that makes that community so special. And what I love about, you know, Las Vegas and Nevada, it is such a big melting pot of all of these different countries and ethnicities, and it's tailoring your approach accordingly to that. You know, even now, obviously, there's a big with the census, you know, with the African American community. It's really, I learned a lot about the community through the census as well, working with another colleague, of just all of the different organizations as well. Like we have our awesome, you know, whether it is the Latin Chamber, Urban Chamber, Asian Chamber, I mean, great established organizations that are delivering so much. But there's also, you know, other opportunities to really engage with those communities. It's just doing your homework and getting out and learning about it.
Yeah, I mean, 50 years ago, it was probably consistent in the demographics and the outreach. You know, it'd be a public meeting and maybe a radio ad or something like that. But now it's just getting more and more diverse, like what you're saying. And if you had advice to give a project manager that was getting ready to do some sort of public involvement, what advice would you give them specifically in relation to the diversity? You know, what do they need to be thinking about in order to make sure that it hits the demographics that it needs to?
I would say know the demographic of where, you know, your project is taking place. You know, try to do some research, and I think there's, you know, plenty of people in the community that will give you honest feedback and say, okay, you need to be talking to this organization, or here's this opportunity. So I would say do your homework, you know, from the beginning, from when the time starts, and start laying out a framework, a plan of, you know, from beginning to end. It's really, you know, I'm working on another project right now. It's depending on the length of the project. You know, I know with Project Neon, right, it was such a long project. It's taking the time to nurture and develop those relationships. If you know it is going to be a project, I know not everything is, you know, 4 years, but it's identifying those key players, you know, putting a plan together and seeing and updating the plan, I think, as you go along with, you know, what does success look like to the end client or to you, you know, as the organization. Right? It's how do you want to measure? Is it through media impressions? Is it through, you know, stakeholder one-on-one virtual meetings? Or is it through, you know, if you do a Facebook Live? I find that sometimes people aren't clear on what their goals are, or what does success look like in terms of public outreach. So I think it's having that defined at the start of the project.
Got it. And of all the kind of work that you do and industries you serve, what are some of your favorite types of things? Like, what do you hope for that really gets you out of the bed in the morning?
Oh man, that's an awesome question. I love when I see that, like I said earlier, Las Vegas and Nevada is such a melting pot. When an organization like the Library District or Discovery Children's Museum comes from a place where they want to authentically engage, and it's not just something that we're just going to do a one-off on Hispanic Heritage Month or on Cinco de Mayo, which we don't really celebrate. It's coming from a place of really wanting to do good and wanting to provide a service and wanting to really deliver value and engage. And by that, I mean, they have an invested interest in, it starts at the top on their executive board, right? Do they believe in the mission of engaging with communities of color? Is it in your plan at the top, your executive, goals? Is it reflected in your budget? Is it reflected in your outreach strategy? That's what makes me excited. Is it reflected in your content and your communication channels? That's what really makes me happy and passionate, because I didn't see that growing up in Las Vegas, and to see it more now, but I really think it takes, a lot more people talking about it and a lot more, for them to have examples of what that looks like, because otherwise, some people just don't know what they don't know.
So so you're saying you can tell when you are involved in a project and it's one where it's just checking the box, and then, or one that is sincere and passionate and really wants to get involved.
Yes, yes. And that, if I can tell, I know that the community can tell. Trust me. I mean, I've had several conversations of, and they're not even, local to here, but it's like a, organization from another state wants to start something in Las Vegas, like, oh, here's our kickoff, let's invite you to this event. I never heard from them again, like whatever happened to that? So I think the community knows, they can see it, like, same like election year, right? Like, we want to hear from you more than other times when, more than when it's an election year.
That's a good example.
It's really like, it just, which it makes it harder, I think, for for other agencies that are really putting in the work, but knowing that it's going to take time. Results don't happen overnight. It's really doing the work up front and nurturing that relationship and the trust and that aspect of it to say, hey, it really paid off.
And you've mentioned kind of the one-way communication. How can we do better as an industry in building that two-way communication, where we're not just getting the word out, but we're actually listening and integrating, the feedback into our projects and into the campaigns?
I would say, with that, just last week I don't even remember actually what project it was. I had seen something on Facebook asking for comments, and I asked a question, and the fact that the project manager, I was in no way related to this project. The project manager called me, and like, people don't even pick up the phone sometimes now and call. Like, she called me and went through, like, here's your question. Great question. I was the only one that submitted the question on this particular project, but took the time to follow up and follow through, because I said, well, you send me your email with your contact and keep me posted. So I think it's those little, like customer service, the little things that picking up the phone and a phone call, or the follow up afterwards. And I think sometimes, after maybe it is a public outreach campaign or initiative, is, okay, we're done. Thank you for your help. Like, we'll see you in 2 years, or, whatever the case may be. It's really, how do you continue with that relationship even after the project is done?
Yeah, and I've been to a lot of public meetings, and you get that sense of insincerity or sincerity from the project manager, because they have avenues in place where they say, people will come up and give their comments, and then they'll say, okay, make sure you write down your comment. But, I think listening, like that project manager, that was a great example. Listening, making sure they know it, that's
Mhm.
going to build the trust and the sincerity for the long term if we actually do it. I mean, let's take an example. Let's say someone is worried about a new sound wall on a freeway project, that it's going to shade their backyard and they're not going to be able to grow their garden or whatever. You know, we could tell them, go make a comment, you've been heard, but to actually follow up with them and say, hey, we want you to know that we went through this study and we can lower the height of the wall 2 feet.
Yeah.
And that will build trust. And I think it would go beyond that individual person, because they're going to tell other people,
Yes,
they're going to tell their
yes.
community, and it's going to build trust over the length of the project.
Yes, and that's exactly, I'm gonna go, right, we're gonna tell 10 of our friends about our experience. And if it is, I mean, for me, right, my family all lives within the east side of Las Vegas. Like we all, well, not as much try to get together because of social distancing, but it's how you make people feel, and that's, and in the world right now, where there is so much content, there's so many surveys and studies, and we're asking a lot of the community. I think it's, what are you going to do differently to make you stand out, to make you as a person, you as a company, that people will remember you for, and will make you, because you showed up for them. And I think in terms of that two-way communication, that's what's going to get them to show up for you, whether it is for this, current project or a future project, knowing that you have, that that trust already established.
And you have on your LinkedIn page grassroots marketing. What is that, and how do you effectively implement that?
Well, grassroots is really, at the core, it's getting to those individual communities and pockets in Las Vegas, for example, right? Is it right? I have a great relationship with the consulate of El Salvador, right? With the consul. So it's really at a grassroots level. If you're trying to reach the Hispanic community, but at a grassroots level, like let's say it's the Salvadorian community. It's really knowing the little details and nuances of that community and how to serve them. And same with, like, we have a Puerto Rican association, we have a Peruvian association. It's really nailing down on who each of those communities are and how we can serve and reach them.
And what advantages or challenges do you face being a minority, woman-owned business in our industry?
Oh man, you're good at this. um, well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Latina women get paid 50 cents on the dollar to, a white male. And, so I think there is that disproportion in terms of pay. There is that, I mean, and I think throughout my entire, life and career is just really as a woman, and there's a lot of cultural nuances that in the past we may not have been business owners, we may not have been working moms, we, all of these things that my mom's generation, because that's just what the customs and cultures and the country that she grew up in was different. So I think it's really making a name for ourselves and working that much harder to get to where we are, with the resources available to us.
I appreciate you answering my questions, and I mean, giving perspective to someone like me or other people. There are challenges that I faced running a business, but I'm sure the challenges that you face are different and
Yeah, yeah.
arguably much
And
harder.
when I started my business, I think too, it's seeing, people that look like me that had started businesses, or people in positions of power. And I don't, it wasn't really, and I actually wrote something about this last year, is it wasn't until I started working at MGM Resorts and Irene Bustamante, who works at Workforce Connections now, she used to be a former, assemblywoman. Like, she was the first Latina women, a power that I saw, because she used to work at MGM Resorts. And I remember how impactful that was for me, because I had never seen, that I recall, from high school to college, a woman in a position of power. And that, I think, it's seeing more people that look like us in these types of positions or outreach efforts or whatever whatever it is. It's show them someone that looks like you because they've been through it as well and they understand, the hard work that it takes, the nuances, and the just the respect for what it takes, and also just for the community. And that's why I always say I feel like this is, taking care of a community is what I'm doing now that's taken great care of me.
Well, and hopefully you're going to do the same for future generations, not just your kids, but younger people in the communications industry, engineering industry. They'll look at you and say, she did it, maybe
Yeah.
I can do it too, where they might not have had that before.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, when I first had my first daughter, because literally, the year I started my business, the following year, I got pregnant. And I remember like going to pitch meetings and RFP meetings and like pregnant. And it was, it was, now I would say like, you're my lucky charm, when she was in my belly. It's like, just give me the strength. Like, of course, dealing with the whole side effects of nausea, and I was pregnant in the summer, but it's really all of these things that you don't know how you're going to do it until you're put in that situation and you work your way through it. But when I had my first daughter, right after, I started this group, and it's like a private Facebook group, but it's called Latinas in Power. And it was really for that, to your earlier point, is what do I want my legacy to be in the community as well? And how do I want to give back? And it's through this group, we get together with other, whether it is, Latina professionals and other industries or younger generation, is how do we help build confidence and open doors for one another? Because that's what there was not as much of. And it's more about the uplifting, lift us as we climb, as I always say as well. How do we open doors and make those introductions and build that self-confidence to be able to take these sort of, challenges and seize the day.
Well, just bravo to you. I mean, I mentioned the 5 years, 80% of businesses fail, and, being a mom plus the woman and minority owned, you've overcome all odds. So very cool.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
So what does the future of your consulting group look like? Where do you feel like you're trying to go?
That's really what I've been asking a lot myself, especially, I think we're all of us after and during this process of COVID, right, is looking at things differently. And what are the projects that I'm really excited about? Who are the people I want to work with? I've had some national conversations, because obviously there is a need not just for local public outreach and just, the Hispanics specialization, but, I'm working on a virtual conference right now with Unidos US, and they're the leading, organization when it comes to the national Hispanic community. So I'd love to see where I can work with more on a national consultant basis with these organizations and help them with their goals and their deliverables. And then too, I've enjoyed being the stay-at-home mom, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's, I have toddlers, and it's really carving out more time for them in my day, to take time off too, and just like, I don't always have to be doing something, and it's, let me just enjoy time with my family, because I think, with all of this, you just think of, these are the things that we're never going to get back and that we should be enjoying, the most of.
Well, that'd be great. I mean, obviously you serve the Las Vegas community, so you're hoping to broaden your horizons and get beyond Nevada.
Yes, I would love to broaden my horizons, but also with a niche focus, because when you say, I'm sure as design, right? Like, when it's, what does that look like? And really, what is I'm going through this process, like my ideal client avatar look like, right? What are their pain points? What are their needs? And how do I, right? It's not about me, it's about them. And how do I solve their problems and help them get to where they're going? So I think for me, it's, looking at what that looks like whether it is locally, but also nationally, and work on those relationships and that rapport as well.
Got it. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you and learn more about your amazing services, what would be the best way?
Well, I'm very active on social media. I would say they could connect with me at Ericka Aviles Consulting, Ericka. Hopefully, I'm sure you'll link it in the show notes.
Definitely.
On Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, that's my handle. And also, if they go on my website, ericaaviles.com, you can sign up for my newsletter, or you can send me a note directly on there as well. And I love to hear from anyone.
Very cool. And I did want to report that we did the census. We did it online, and actually we've been involved in family history in our family, and so we've seen the power of the census. You know, being able to go look and see our ancestors, you know, learn about them through that process. And so we didn't just do it, but we actually told our kids what we were doing and the importance of it. And so it was actually a fun experience for our family.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I just wrote down earlier today, I did this Healthy Nevada test last year, and it gives you, you know, just your all of your different groups that I'm from. So I'm like 10% Jewish, like 2% Nigerian, European, like, and now during this COVID, I said I want to explore more about my culture and my ethnicity and my roots and where do I come from, because, you know, I came here at 6 years old, you know, as an immigrant family from Central America. And I want to learn more, because now that I have kids, I want to be able to pass that down to, you know, to them and their future kids. I really, I want to focus more on that too.
Well, I appreciate your work with the census. I mean, you know, a lot of people think it's just a bother and something that the government won't stop pestering them about, but it's like, it's part of our Constitution. It's part of our family history. Like it's very important. And I hope the world understands that.
Yes, yeah, and it funds so many, you know, programs for our community. And in a time now where there is so much need for these types of community programs, we need to make sure we're getting our fair share, because it only happens, you know, every 10 years. So it's very important to get counted. And this time, I mean, the best thing is now you can do it online. Before it was, you know, just through mail, and now it's easy as a cup of coffee, they say, to get counted. So yes, I encourage everyone to go on and do it.
Okay, well, I have to say it's been an absolute honor to talk to you, Ericka. And do you have any closing thoughts? Anything we didn't cover?
No, thank you for the opportunity. You know, feel free to connect with me on all social platforms, and I really appreciate the opportunity and the platform. I think this is great that what you're doing, and there's so much opportunity, I think, for us as a community to take public outreach to the next level. And it really is going to be a community, an effort on us, I think, to just show the community how else we can continue serving them.
Great. Well, thank you again, Ericka.
Thank you.